G'day and welcome to The Outer Side. I'm Tony, and in this episode I'm joined by Timmy Westwood, better known as Timmy Has Heart. Timmy, welcome to the show, mate.
Cheers, mate. It's good to be here.
It's good to be in Tassie again, and it's great to be here in your shed. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Fast Five. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
Gee, all right.
What is your dream car?
GQ Patrol.
Love it. What's your favourite place in Australia?
Oh, wow. Probably the hut at the $1,000 track.
Good answer. If you guys haven't seen that, you should check it out. It's a pretty sick little hut,
Yeah,
mad fireplace.
Beautiful place.
What's the toughest four-wheel drive track you've ever driven?
Oh, man, that's tough because there's so many different aspects. Sorry, I know there's supposed to be the Fast Five, but
No, that's all right.
in terms of endurance and perseverance and just holding it together, it'd have to be the $1,000 track, I think.
It's the hardest on the cars, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just grueling, man. It's 25 kilometres. So, I mean, and you don't even film that much when you film it, like, because you've just got to keep moving.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it'd have to be that, I reckon. There's just so many challenges.
I'd agree with that, man. And I'll say this, and I've said it to a few people, the GQ Ute has never been the same since I drove the $1,000 track in it last year. Like, just the carnage that ensues from driving that track. It's hard on the gear, eh?
Yeah, mate, it really is.
Favourite band?
Probably Architects currently. I sort of weave through a few, but Architects, I think.
Nice. And what would you eat for your last meal?
I honestly don't know. Probably it'd be Mexican. It'd be like a taco or a burrito or something, I reckon.
With a Red Bull.
Yeah, with a Red Bull.
Very good. All right, mate. So you've got a pretty interesting story in terms of you're a YouTube content creator. You also do all of your own work on your own cars, but you're not a qualified mechanic, correct?
No, not a qualified mechanic. Not a qualified anything to do with cars, really.
You're a baker, right?
I'm a baker by trade.
Yeah, right. So what was the pathway? Like, how did you get into four-wheel drives in the first place that, I guess, led to you being where you are now?
That's a really good question, and something I haven't really talked about, actually, but four-wheel drives were always something that we used as a family to get where we were going, right? So, I grew up hunting, fishing, wood cutting. Everything we did involved a four-wheel drive to get there. Mm-hmm. Nothing like what we've got these days. And it was never about the challenge back then. It was always about the destination. And slowly, I think I've found more love for the challenge in getting there, and still today, I use four-wheel drives to get to these amazing places, but I've grown to appreciate, the hills, the bogholes, the winching, everything you do to get there, for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny, that seems to be quite a natural progression for a lot of people. Like, a lot of my guests have started, with their families, camping and whatever, and then as they've become more embedded in the four-wheel drives, they're sort of chasing those challenges and doing the harder stuff.
100%, man. And yeah, a lot of the beautiful places in Tasmania specifically, you need a pretty well set up four-wheel drive to get there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, growing up with Dad, we got bogged and whatnot. And it was always just like a stock Navara, trying to get a trailer full of wood through a paddock or something, and we'd get bogged. But yeah, heaps more about the challenge now, for sure.
Yeah, and it's something interesting that I've noticed. I've been down here a few times now. This is my 3rd year in a row I've been down here wheeling, and especially this trip, I don't know why I've noticed it more, but just the average setup of a four-wheel drive here, massive lifts, 37s are pretty standard down here, right? And
yeah.
It indicates just how hard the tracks are.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's just because it's so wet down here. So the only thing at the end of the day that's going to get you through bog holes and mud is, diff clearance, right? And
big tyres.
Yeah, big tyres.
Yeah, we've noticed that as well. All our cars, pretty much every car in this convoy that we've been filming with had 35s on it, and we're still diffing out everywhere.
Yeah.
Because the ruts are massive, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Everyone running 37s and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So you've always had four-wheel drives in your life, and I guess they've moved from a bit of a tool into a more recreational thing for you.
Yeah.
And then how did the YouTube thing start for you?
Man, so, I mean, I've been four-wheel driving for a while now. I had a Navara, and I didn't understand that four-wheel drives were different. So when I bought my Navara, I didn't know that Patrols had solid axles and that the Navara had IFS, and so I just sort of got the one that I liked the look of, and assumed that would do the job. And so I pushed that as far as it would go, which was like 33s and twin locked, and I'd done everything in Tassie, and so it got to the point that I wanted to do the $1,000 track, which was when I looked towards the Patrol. But being in this Navara, I was looking through YouTube trying to find someone else that's four-wheel driving with a Navara. And that's when I met Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
And so, seeing this dude doing all these amazing tracks in a Navara, I kind of related to him.
So which model Navara did you have?
I had the D40.
Okay.
And if you remember back, if anyone's watched Tyler's early videos, I actually appeared on one of Tyler's early videos. Yeah, in the Navara. And we did Ring River, Cumberland, and... actually, just Ring River and Cumberland, I think. But yeah, so Tyler and I sparked a friendship when, he was like sub 10,000 subs.
Yeah.
And so we sort of developed a friendship. We wheeled our Navaras together whenever he was down. And I ended up moving to a Patrol. And in 2022, I went to Cape York. And at the end of that trip, all my mates sort of wanted to go to the Goldie and play up a bit.
Yeah.
And I said, screw that. I know Tyler's going wheeling in Melbourne, or in Victoria rather. And during that trip, Tyler convinced me to start YouTube.
Oh, true.
He knew that I was just this dude down in Tassie, building cool stuff, wheeling cool tracks. And he's like, dude, you got to point a camera at it. Like, there's such an opportunity there. And he knew that, I was going to be coming home to chop this car and do the $1,000 track solo and do all these cool things. He finally convinced me to point a camera at it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And Tyler's a great bloke. I've got a lot of time for him, and I know you guys get along really well.
Yeah.
And it's funny that I also had a D22 Navara.
Really?
That was my first full drive, and what you just said makes so much sense. Like, I've always been into cars, but I never really knew much about full drives.
Nah.
And when I bought my Navara, it was to tow a boat.
Yeah.
It wasn't to go wheeling. So I bought a D22 because I thought they looked cool.
Yeah.
And then I started wheeling it, and I very quickly realised
that four-wheel drives are different.
Four-wheel drives are different.
Yeah.
And, like torsion bar suspension and
exactly.
IFS and all that sort of stuff. And that's what I went to an 80 series from the Navara, because it was like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
There's a reason that everyone that drives these hard tracks is in a Patrol or a Cruiser, right?
100%. Yeah, it's something I realised as well. That, it's just one of those things. I assumed that they were all the same, and you're wondering why everyone's got a Patrol or a Cruiser. But that became evident.
Yeah, and I think it's all part of the learning curve, right? Like, and it's good because I know for me, like I still don't claim to be a good driver, but I learnt so much wheeling an unlocked IFS car.
Yeah.
Before I got into a twin locked reduction gear animal. Yeah,
you got to pick lines. I still remember driving my Navara, particularly before it was twin locked, and it was always about, trying to get both wheels to grip up so that, one didn't spin. Sort of thing.
You got to work for it a bit harder, eh? Instead of getting a bit lazy with the lockers, you just sort of point it up the hill and it finds its way.
That's why climbers is so good.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what you're in. You can either be in something fairly stock and pick your lines, or you can drive straight up the cracks and flex it out if you've got a monster.
Yeah, it is a pretty cool track, and it's like a real choose your own adventure. Hey, we were in a convoy of 6 cars, and there's just cars going every different direction based on the setup.
100%. I've got a lot of videos actually of just sitting at the bottom of the hill and all the boys are just taking different lines. It's
pretty cool.
Yeah,
right?
it's a beautiful place.
So there's a pretty massive four-wheel drive community down here, right? Like, I know we're down here with four-wheel drive 24/7, obviously, and the fan base in this state, I mean, it's a big show, right? There's a lot of people subscribe to it, but down here in particular, it just seems like everybody knows the channel, everybody knows Sean, everybody knows Sooty.
Yeah.
And just driving around, as I said, there's just big lifted four-wheel drives everywhere. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, actually, there's a four-wheel drive group down here on Facebook, and I think the moment you guys landed in the state, there was a picture of someone had posted
on the dock, right?
Yeah, of Sean's car already.
Yeah.
It's and so the village is just alert at the moment you get down here.
Yeah, there's no hiding down here, but it's been amazing, man. And the four-wheel drive community here is something special. You guys are so lucky. I've had a time on this trip with just freak occurrences and breakages, and I had a fella give me a transfer case for free,
Yep.
let me use his hoist, gave me a new viscous hub and fan, like, you know, just, I had blokes drive 2 hours last night to bring me a window, like,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal, and I just feel like it's different here to around other places in Australia.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. But yeah, we do have a super tight-knit community. Like I know that we've had breakages
Yeah.
on the West Coast and whatnot. And I've had people sort of bring, you know, tie rods and you know, we had a guy once that was driving up the Coldstream River and he broke his tie rod. And so another bloke gets his out, bolts it into his car, drives his car back to Waratah, brings the tie rod back out, and then we'll drive the next one out. Like,
Amazing.
Everyone just helps each other, man. It's the way it should be.
It absolutely should be, and I guess, like, you know, it's a smaller population and it's a smaller geographical area, but it's got a really nice feel to it, and like we've had a lot of breakages on this trip, not just me, but
Yeah.
we've been able to get parts so quickly down here.
Yeah, that's good.
And everyone's been super helpful, so yeah, it's been great. Now, when I first met you in person, you said to me, and I remember this vividly, that no one has touched your GQ other than you.
Yeah.
In terms of, you've done absolutely everything yourself.
Yeah.
And you're a baker.
Yeah. When you say it like that, it sounds a bit weird, but
I think it's amazing, mate.
Yeah.
Because I'm the first to admit, I'm not a mechanically minded person. I like cars and I like driving them, but I'm not great at fixing them. But you've done an amazing job with this car. So let's talk about it. It started life as a wagon.
Yep.
It is no longer a wagon. You cut it in half.
No, yeah, cut it in half. But yeah, so I guess to start with it has to start back at the Navara. That Navara, I never did anything to that myself. So I took it in for services every 5,000. If I had a bull bar to get installed, I took it in with my next service to get it installed. If I had a winch to get installed, I took it in to get it installed. Like everything on that car got done by someone else because I simply didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, by the time I'd sort of done a few laps of the state in the Navara and I had that yearning for something harder, and so that's when I got the Patrol, and I made a conscious choice. The moment that I start wheeling this thing, like I want to be working on it myself. I want to be building it myself. I want to be learning on it myself. And I still remember the first job I ever did on it was an inner axle seal, and I was petrified. I was like I'm sure lots of people feel like that too. Like I started taking things apart and I was like writing things on a piece of cardboard so that I knew how to put it back together. And it was just an inner axle seal. It was like nothing crazy. And I look back now, because this was only like probably 2018 or something. I think I got the Patrol originally. This wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And now, like, there's not a bolt on that car I haven't undone. Yeah. You know? Like, quite literally.
Yeah. You've fully rebuilt that car like a number of times, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so, yeah, it started out its life as a two-tone red over gold wagon. It looked really nice from the outside. Like, it was really clean. Every panel was clean. It was getting like little bits of rust around the back roof.
Yeah,
but all in all, it looked good, but it was a gremlin monster inside. Like, you know, it had been swapped from a petrol.
Okay.
By the previous owner.
So it was TD42 when you got it?
Yeah, it's TD when I got it. It was still registered as a TB when I got it. But yeah, like dead set, the fuel filter was just like cable tied to the inside of the engine bay. There was like fuel hose that was made out of air hose. The dash didn't really work because it was still a petrol dash.
Yeah.
And so the only thing that worked was the speedo and the water temp, I think. Like, it was just a monster inside. It looked nice, but it was pretty rough.
Sounds a lot like my ute.
Yeah, this probably sounds like a lot of GQs, I reckon. But yeah, it's come a long way.
Yeah, so what prompted you to cut it?
So by that stage, it had been wheeled hard for a few years. A lot of beach, did Cape York, and then glassy Victorian high country. It had been all over Australia and had done a lot of hard work. And while it did have a lot of dents, like surprisingly, the front of the car was straight because it was almost like I was meant to be in a ute. It's like everything past the driver's doors was just dented. Yeah. But despite it being dented and everything, it was actually the rust that prompted me to cut it. because around the back of the roof was just getting rust holes in it, and in front of the rear wheel arches on a wagon, there's like a plastic cover, and all under that was just because that had just sandwiched salt water and crap. So all that behind that was rusty, and even like where the body must have been flexing, it started getting a crease in front of the rear wheels, and so a decision needed to be made. Do I find another wagon? Or do I take this car that has been undone and done back up by me in every way imaginable for the past however many years and keep this car going because I know it? And so, I was talking to Drew one night and he was like, dude, let's just chop it. And so, the decision got made. I ripped the drawers out and all my touring stuff out. Behind the driver and passenger seat, instead of having back seats, I had a platform that had my pantry and my fridge. All that came out, ripped everything out, ripped the wiring out, took it to his house, and we didn't even use, we just used a 6-inch grinder or a 5-inch grinder and just went straight through the floor, straight through the roof, and then picked the back up with a block and tackle and drove away, and that was that. That
is so sick. So, as I said, you're a baker, but you cut your car in half. How did you know what you were doing? Like, is it watching YouTube stuff? Like, because there's obviously a huge amount of information on YouTube. Or do you just have mates that you got guidance from? What was the sort of process?
So by that stage, I mean, I'd done a lot to this car, even as a wagon. Like, I'd gone from stock car to, I put the entirety of the superior suspension in by myself. I'd blown up 3 engines. Because one day I decided that I wanted to put a bigger turbo and pump on. And so I snapped the crank in the original engine that was in it, and I had to pull that out, put another one in. I had blown the head a couple of times. And so, by this stage, I'm 3 engines in. And, this is all just going from that axle seal that I did for the first time to, maybe I had to have a new radiator. So I learnt a little bit more, new head, blown up engine, clutch. And I think I just sort of worked my way up. And I'd always tinkered around with the welder, but not a heap, and so I think that just sort of elevated over the years as well. And so by the time that it was time to chop it, I don't think it seemed like that much of a crazy job. Like, it was daunting, but once we'd cut the back off and pulled the back away, my first priority was to start somewhere. And so, I don't know, if you watch my chop videos, all I did was cut a piece of RHS to the contour of the floor, tacked that in, and then we had somewhere flat to work from. And so then it was just a matter of sort of building a rear wall. And I mean, these days there's companies out there that make...
Just buy the wall?
Buy the wall.
So did you fabricate your own?
Yeah, we did our own from scratch. And that was mainly because of the price. I got a quote from one of these companies for the price, plus shipping down to Tas.
Of course, yeah.
Which is, it's a big piece of mild steel. Getting a rear wall shipped down to Tas was going to be huge. And so... we just started, we made like an RHS frame that was just like the floor, 4 uprights, a piece of RHS across the top of the doors, and then 2 uprights, and then a bit across the roof. And then we just started sticking steel to it, and then, weld all around the edge, seam seal it and everything. And then for extra cabs, to get the same shape behind the drawer, that's actually just doors. So the back doors are just welded shut and then cut in half.
Yeah, right.
And so the back doors are actually still on there. It's just that they're welded shut.
That's too funny.
And then you just weld them all up.
Yeah,
and so,
man, you should be really proud because it's an awesome looking car. And I know, even what we're talking about, like learning about the differences between 4-wheel drives, right? I've always been into cruisers.
Yeah.
And when I made the decision to buy, to be honest, I was going to chop an 80, right? That was the plan because I wanted a ute for these harder wheeling trips.
Yeah.
And I was going to cut an 80 because I wanted solid axle, coils all around.
Yeah.
And then one of the boys at work said, why don't you just buy a GQ, you idiot? They're basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And you'll save yourself all the stuffing around of cutting your car in half.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know at the time was the difference between a factory GQ ute and a chopped GQ ute and having that extra little bit of space.
It makes a big difference.
So jealous of your setup because you've just got that extra bit of storage. Like this whole trip, like I've just had clothes and chainsaws and parts like on the passenger seat. And I like drive a rut and I get a bag hitting me in the head and like, it's just, I think for the sort of driving you do, that is the perfect car, right?
100%. I wouldn't change it for the world. And you're right, it makes an incredible difference. I actually, because I don't like extra cabs. I'd never seen a good looking GQ extra cab. I think they always look a tiny little bit long or a tiny little bit short, or the wall looks a tiny little bit square. And so I'd never actually found one that I liked the look of. But every time I looked at my wagon from side on, I could see the driver's seat coming into the space of the rear window. And so I knew that it had to be an extra cab.
Yeah, otherwise you're upright.
Yeah, otherwise you're sitting too much forward. And so I started looking at the GUs actually, and I noticed that the back wall isn't straight. It actually goes like that.
Yeah, okay.
And that's where Drew and I had the idea to go straight to the top of the doors and then just have a tiny little kick forward. And not to toot my own horn too much, but my extra cab is the only one that I've actually liked the look of. The only thing I don't like the look of is the hard edge. It'd be cool if it was rounded.
Yeah, like a radius edge if you'd use tube.
Exactly, yeah. I wasn't really confident enough with tube at that stage, but yeah, if I was going to change anything, that would be the only thing. But the taper and the size is bang on.
And so you've built all your own bar work?
Yep.
You've built a couple of trays?
Or
just one tray for that car?
Just one tray for that one.
And then a couple of trays for the GU?
Yeah, won't talk about that. We can talk about that.
Yeah, that's all good. So, and you know, like, you've built winches for the car, like engines, you've done the whole lot, right?
Yeah.
And you painted it?
Yeah, Drew actually painted it. Okay. So that's probably the only exception to I'm the only one that's ever worked on this car.
Yeah, but you and Drew are good mates, so that counts.
Yeah, and I've done plenty on his car too, don't you worry.
It hasn't gone to workshops, I guess is the point, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so, Drew is a fabricator by trade. And so anytime that I was welding something to the car that mattered, I always got his backup or his point of view, his opinion. And because I didn't have much of a space at my house, he was actually heavily involved in the shop. So, you know, I was there every weekend working on this thing because I was working full time Monday to Friday. Friday night, I'd cruise to Drew's house, stay at his house all weekend, cruise home Sunday, go back to work. And so, he'd always, he wasn't working on it with me full time, but he'd always pop out to the shed and see where I was at. I'd pick his brain. And we just got through it. And so the bar work, the original set of rock sliders were built by a mate of mine, but they were for a wagon. And so when I changed it to a ute, I shortened them and had to remake some mounts because I had to add body mounts for the ute. And so over the years, I think that's its second or third lap of bar work. Yeah, right. Because I've had problems with the front too, like going from the Warn winch to the Cobra winch. I had to widen the middle hoop and adjust the bar a little bit. And so, it's had a few iterations of bar work, but I kind of like where it's landed now. Oh,
it looks tough as, man. And it's very functional as well as looking cool.
Yeah, the only thing that I'd love to try further is what you've done, what you and Matt did to yours. Having that bar tucked right up against the car.
A mid-mount winch was a great idea until the execution maybe wasn't so great and it caused headaches.
Yeah,
I would never have predicted that would happen. But having that extra approach angle, I've noticed it even on this trip. You know exactly where the front of the car is, right? Like you know if you're going to hit something because it's tucked up as close as possible to that front car.
And being 24 volt as well, you know, there's so many benefits. You've got the fact that you all of a sudden don't have an extra 50 kilos hanging off the front of the car in a car that's already got an absolute boat anchor under the bonnet. So that weight is back. Number two, you get the bar tucked right up against the car, which is a huge mod in the comp scene. Like they're always shortening the front and getting stuff on the back, like radiators and that, to get that approach angle, you know, really good. You also have the fact that with 24 volt, your batteries are back there. And so instead of running these 120 mil cable which also weighs a lot.
Weighs a ton.
Yeah, and so you've all of a sudden got your winch back where your batteries are, so your cables can be this long, half the size, weigh half the amount. So yeah, there's heaps of benefits to it, but you also can't see what the rope's doing.
Yeah, well, obviously with my setup, it needs more eyelets under the car.
Yeah,
it needs eyelets. But the other thing we were talking about the other day is I've got a rear vision camera for like my rear view mirror, and you can run 2 cameras on it.
That's
and
brilliant.
Jesse said, why don't you put a camera under the tray on the winch?
Yep.
So I can be sitting in the cab and see exactly what the winch is doing, and I think I'll do it. I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I believe Pete had a mirror.
Yeah, so he had a mirror behind him looking down.
Yeah.
Because he didn't run a tray when he was racing, so he'd have a mirror looking down at the winch, and he'd look in his rear view mirror, and he could see the winch. Just clever, right?
Yeah, that is clever. And I mean, technology now, we've got cameras, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
that was a long time ago, but absolutely, the build of my ute is inspired by the comp scene. There's no it's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
I have no interest in competing. I'm interested in watching it, but I don't want to compete. But there's a reason that those guys do these particular mods to a car, because it does make a big difference.
Yeah, it works.
And I think it'll get sorted. It was a brand new setup for this trip.
Yeah.
And we found the flaws in the system pretty quickly.
Yeah. And that's going to happen with anything, right? Like, I don't think there wouldn't be much on that car I haven't done and then adjusted later, It's just one of those things.
And I think, I was chatting to Paulie about this recently, and he was saying, he builds a new tray for his ute every year.
Yeah.
And I said, why? And he's like, well, because I learn more all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't want, last year's welding skills, and I don't want last year's design. So he's constantly iterating and constantly looking for improvements. And I think I know for me, that's one of the most fun parts about four-wheel driving, right? Is going out and using your car, making little changes, finding things that work, finding things that don't. My 80 I've changed so many times.
Yeah, 100%.
You do a mod and you're like, this is going to be sick, and then it's not sick.
Yeah.
Or, it creates more problems than it's good for.
Yeah.
So the GQ, you're pretty much just, I don't even know what you could do to that car now. It's pretty heavily modified, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty much at the end of the road with it. It's very much approaching the limit of being able to have registration. And to be honest, there's another aspect which people don't really consider, which is how far do you want to push the car? Because, if you've got a Hilux, let's say an LM106 Hilux, and it's on 32s, to have a hard day wheeling, you can sort of go and fluff around on most tracks, most forestry roads and whatnot. When it comes time to challenge a car that's on, 35s, 37s, twin locks, solid axle, all the flex in the world, good weight distribution, if you want a good day on the winch, you're going to start being in danger, real danger.
Yep.
And so to challenge a car like that, we're talking 6-stage, Climbys waterfall, Cumberland switchback, rude, nasty hills in Victoria where people roll every day, Glasshouse Mountains, Little Red, Big Red. You're starting to get into dangerous
big
country.
Consequences, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm not really ready to have something super nasty happen wheeling. And so, that sort of comes into the equation as well.
It absolutely does, man. And I've got a daughter now, and that's changed my perspective.
Yeah.
And even some of the stuff we've driven on this particular trip, it's rude, man. I drove that waterfall in Climbys the other day, and it's scary, dude. The consequences are severe.
Yeah.
Especially there.
Yeah.
And it's not even a hard track.
No.
It's not a particularly difficult track to drive, but if you get it wrong, then it's dire, right?
Yeah, I'm very confident that it'd be all over Red Rover.
I don't think you're surviving that if you go off the waterfall.
Nah.
So the GQ you're going to obviously keep. That's the car, but you've also been tinkering away with another Patrol.
Yeah, so the GU, that I've owned that for a long time, but it's only sort of come time to start working on that and bring it to life in a Timmy Has Heart kind of way.
Yeah, so your tray's coming together. It's looking pretty cool, and it's I'll put a photo up just for anyone who's watching as well, because it's a pretty sick setup. So what's the sort of theory with the setup on this one? It's a bit more of a touring setup than the GQ. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, so this car I bought right before I went to Cape York in 2022. And that was back when my GQ was still a wagon. The GQ as a wagon was very, very livable. Like I had drawers in the back, fridge, pantry, all that kind of stuff. But like, I knew that the GQ was going to be for hard stuff. When I got home, put a couple of tubs on the back and turned the GQ into a really light wheeler that's not very livable, I knew that it was time to have another car that could do the long distance stuff. And so my mate that we were speaking about before, Drew, his pop owned this GU here for 12 years and it was fully grandpa spec, like, stock suspension, stock tyres, stock engine. It only had like 230 or 40,000 Ks on it, which is, that's early days for a TD.
Absolutely. Mine's got 430,000 or something on it.
And it'll get 1 million on it, provided you don't go nuts with the pump, nuts with the turbo, and keep the kettle in check. That'll do 1 million Ks. So yeah, very, very young Patrol in terms of, wheeling age. And so I bought it and just parked it in the front yard and thought that can just stay there for the moment, because I knew GQs were going to get tougher and tougher to get parts for. I knew that there was going to come a point where you just weren't be able to get a not rusty Patrol, GQ Patrol,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And so, yeah, that just sat until it was time to start working on it, and it's time to start working on it.
Yeah.
So I guess the theory is the GQ is going to be retired to just rude Treps, Victoria, Tassie, nasty sort of stuff. And then the GU is what I would go and do the Cape, the Simo, Fraser Island, New South Wales. And like, I'm going to wheel it. That thing is still going to, I'd go and do like glasshouse in it. But it's just going to be more livable, right?
Yeah.
And so I've never wheeled with a canopy. And so it's probably going to take some, ironing out the gremlins.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm going to try and wheel it just as much as I'd wheel the GQ, but just have it be more long distance friendly, essentially.
Yeah, and man, I'm feeling that. Like, I've lived out of a single cab GQ ute for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
And like, it's not that fun. Hey?
Nah.
Like, it's awesome on the track. Like, it drives amazing, and it's the toughest car that I've ever driven by a mile.
Yeah.
But like, if I'm going to go touring, it's 80 series every day of the week, right?
100%.
Like, every day.
And everyone knows that. Everyone who's like built their own car, like Pooley, for example, like it's very, very hard to compromise. Like, it's hard to have a rooftop tent, canopy, but still go and do the Victorian high country and be able to do
Not
steep stuff without...
die.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So it's just finding that balance.
I mean, we've seen it on this trip, right? Like, we're down here with Aaron in the MIT 79.
Yeah.
Massive canopy, rooftop tent. Like, when I had to go and get a radiator in the middle of a track the other day, we went in the 79, and it's scary, dude.
Yeah.
Like, just like a rut that I would just not even blink in the GQ.
Yep.
You're like sitting there holding on because it just feels like it's going to dump itself on its roof.
Yeah, 100%.
But as a touring vehicle, amazing.
Yeah, if you were towing a van to Cape York,
Yeah,
it's
man.
79 every day of the week.
And every night in camp, when I'm like got my little ghetto crack den set up on the back of my ute, and he's just got like this mad pull-out pantry and upright fridges and induction and all this stuff, and I'm like a bit jealous, but then the look of fear on his face when he's driving like the switchback on Lake Cumberland in that thing.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm still surprised you got that car up there.
I've got some amazing photos of that car coming back down. It was way scarier coming down than going up.
Yeah, I reckon.
So yeah, I think it's something I've talked about on this on this show with a few people, like, and it's very easy to say, I'll just have 2 cars. It's like, not everyone can afford it, but if you're going to do really hard wheeling and you still want to tour comfortably, I think it's 2 different vehicles.
Yeah, it's got to be. And like, even that's a challenge in itself, because like, especially being down in Tasmania, if I'm going to do Cape York, like, you're not going to waste the time in New South Wales. Like, you're already up there. You're already like, we're talking 2,000 kilometres from where I am now in Tassie. like that makes it really tricky too, because I can't take 2 cars to Cape York,
Yeah,
right?
you can tow the GQ up.
Exactly. Imagine that. But yeah, so it makes it incredibly hard, man. And yeah, so the GU, I'm going to try my best at least. But at the end of the day, with me so far, wheeling has always won. So like, I'll live out of tubs if it means that I don't have to cry when I'm on angles and that.
That's why I've lived out of the GQ for 2 weeks. And,
Yeah,
and like,
exactly
I've
right.
done quite a few long trips in that car now.
Yeah.
You just sacrifice comfort for capability, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's okay on your own, like, you know, because I'm on my own, I can make it work. But like, you can't do that with the family though. You know, you wouldn't be able to go away.
My wife hates the GQ Ute. We drove it to Queensland once and she's like, I'm never getting in that car ever again. I hate it.
Yeah, right.
Because she's used to the comfort, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, that 80 series is
it's
like
a comfortable vehicle. It's like a living
shuttle.
room.
Yeah.
So, the YouTube stuff, you were doing YouTube before cars.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, do I?
Yeah.
Atlas, hello, mate. Hey,
Decided to come and make an appearance.
yeah. Well, that's good because dogs are more than welcome on this show. Atlas, no, he's busy. Come on, come in. You want to say hello?
So yeah, this is Atlas. He doesn't get seen on my channel very much, but
Yeah,
he's around.
We're dog friendly here at the outer side, aren't we? Good boy. Do you want to talk about that or not?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I didn't know this about you until, I think, who was it? It might have been Pete told me to check out some of your earlier YouTube activity. So,
Yeah, a few people have brought it up over the year. I think Macca posted something on his story once.
Yeah.
Kinzella too, he's brought it up a couple of times. But yeah, a few people have figured it out.
so a bit of music.
Yeah, so I mean, long before baking, long before four-wheel drives, I played in a band. I play drums, I play guitar, I sing, I do everything basically. And then after we toured Australia. So we played Brisbane, I played Sydney, we've played Canberra, Melbourne, Adelaide. The only state I haven't played in, I think, is Northern Territory in WA. But yeah, so I toured in my band in like late teens, early 20s. And after all that, I decided to do like acoustic covers. I always played acoustic guitar because whenever we were camping, I'd always sing and you know, whatnot. And so, yeah, because I liked heavy music, I ended up having this idea to start doing acoustic covers of heavy songs.
Yeah.
And it took off.
Yeah, man.
A few of those have 500,000 views. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think I told you only a month or so ago, my wife and I sat there one night and listened to them all because we're into a lot of that music that you were covering. So yeah, check it out if you want to do a little YouTube digging and find Timmy's old channel because it's really impressive. You're a really talented guy, mate. You should be proud.
Cheers, dude.
So something we spoke about on the phone recently, which I think is something that I know I'm very passionate about and a lot of my guests have been really passionate about, and something that I guess I see as a threat to the four-wheel drive industry, and that's restrictions on modifications of vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to say persecution, but harassment almost.
Yeah.
Which is something that you're experiencing at the moment in terms of transport down here.
Yep, absolutely.
So I guess, look, all across Australia, we've got problems in terms of what we can do in terms of VSB 14 and whether or not there's a state-based legislation. You can have 4-inch and 35s in Queensland, but you can't have it in New South Wales. And then down here, it's quite strange because I see heaps of cars running around on 37s with 6-inch lift and they look like a Sultana. They're a full beater. But then you've got a really well-built, well-engineered car and you're getting constantly harassed. So you said to me that you've never been pulled over and defected in that car.
No, no, never. I've never been pulled over and defected. It's only come about since YouTube. And so people would probably know down here mostly because they'd see me driving around on 32s. And that's exactly why. So yeah, the car is fully engineered for everything except the wheels and tyres.
Yeah.
And it's because I can't, because of VSB 14.
Yes.
Because some blokes decided arbitrarily 10, 15, whatever years ago that no more than 50 mil track and no more than 50 mil tyre increase is considered safe and everything else is unsafe.
Regardless of swerve test, brake test, doesn't matter.
Doesn't
They'll
matter.
just say, no, you can't have anything more than a 315.
Can't have it. And there's no option for me to go, well, show me where it's unsafe. Show me what test I fail. Show me this, show me that. It's just an arbitrarily decided rule. And with some things, there is room for engineering. So like lift, for example, you can go and get engineered for like, I think up to 125 or 150 mil total lift if you pass X, Y, Z. But tyre size, there's no budging.
Which is just madness, right? Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it is madness. And it's just sad because there's two types of people, right? And so there's the type of person that wants the biggest tyres on their car, the biggest lift they can get, because when they drive to Kmart, they want to get a wicked photo for Instagram, and and whether that's right or wrong is up to the audience's decision. But then you've got the bloke like me, for example. I have no ego. Like, I've daily that thing on 32s looking ridiculous. It looks like a skateboard. Could not care less.
Yeah.
Because I get that is its safest daily configuration. When I'm going from here to the shop, that's the safest it can possibly be, right? But when I'm on the edge of a waterfall with a 100-metre plummet to the ocean, that's the unsafest it can be. I could die on those tyres. And the thing to keep me most safe is what I bolt to it when I go there.
Grip.
Yeah, grip. And so, yeah, it's just, I just wish there was this place where we could come to in the middle where, you could test out a VSB 14 and pay a certain rego. Maybe you're only allowed to drive it XYZ times a year. And that works for them. They get the car off the road less, on the road less. They get the car, let's say that you have to be going four-wheel driving to be on those tyres. You can't just drive to Kmart on them. Otherwise, you get fined, defected, whatever. But there is a way we can do this, and they can still make revenue off defects and, certain permits and whatever. There is a way to do this.
And it has to be about revenue, right? Like, when Pooley and Kaido and the boys got defected on a dirt track in the Vic High Country, that's not about safety.
No,
Like,
I don't think any of it's about safety.
I don't think so either.
But
man.
the interesting thing with me, man, is I haven't paid a dime.
So you just get called in.
I get called in.
You go in, you show them your engineering certificate, and then that's it.
Yeah,
so they're just wasting your time.
Yeah, well, I don't know what it's about, to be honest. And the thing is, I can't know who's doing it either. It's anonymous.
So it's likely to be one individual.
Yeah, well, yeah, unless there's like a party of people out there.
There's a gang that's after you.
I've pissed off some gang, but yeah, I'm led, like, I'd have to believe it's one person. And so, yeah, when I was chopping the car, and it's only been since I'm filming it too, because I said I've never been pulled over. And so, yeah, when I was chopping the car, I was halfway through chopping it, halfway through engineering. I'd never intended to be driving the car without engineering. Like, I intended to go the right way about it. And yeah, got a call in, and it hadn't been engineered yet. So like, I called my engineer. I was like, hey, I'm halfway through building this car. It's got called in. What do we do? He just said, take it in. Like, take it in and see what happens. See, whatever they defect you for, sort out. We'll engineer it.
At least it gives you a baseline to work from.
Exactly. So I took it in, and the guys in Launceston that roadworthied the car, they were brilliant. They really liked the car. They thought it was safe. I've got new bushes front to back. The wheel bearings are good. The brakes are good. I look after this car, right? It's got to keep me safe in some of the most remote and dangerous places in Australia.
Yes.
You bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to keep myself safe and everyone else on the road. And so, yeah, got called in. I took it in. They loved it. I got defected for all the obvious stuff, like the fact that it had GU diffs, a TD42, chop, long-range fuel tank, Falcon seats, defects for all that. That's fair enough.
You're right, mate.
How do you go and get them?
Go play with Jesse.
So yeah, engineered for all that, took it back in, cleared, happy days. A few months later, I was doing long arms and hydros. Again, videoing it on YouTube. I said, this is all being engineered. And it was. I was like halfway through engineering and then gets called in again. So same thing, I took it in. They said, yep, nothing's changed. It's just the long arms and hydros. And I said, yeah, that's being engineered. They were like, cool, bring it back after it's been engineered. So I got it engineered, took it back, cleared, happy days. I got left alone for 14 months. And then it just happened again recently. And this time I got done for the booster because I'd videoed.
You'd improved the braking performance of your vehicle?
Not just improved, man. Like, dead set. This thing, the pedal was like kind of hard and the brakes were just getting old. So I went through and did braided brake lines by Bendix, which are ADR approved. I did a GU booster upgrade because it's the only thing that was still GQ in the system. And my steering box was leaking and the only one that I could find on Facebook Marketplace was a GU one. And so I bolted the GU one on.
So you made it steer better and stop better?
Essentially, yeah, and got defected for it.
It just, it doesn't make sense. And I've spoken about it on this show before. Like, I was in the street car scene for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And we used to get harassed endlessly in New South Wales. And New South Wales is a police state. That's pretty obvious. Like, the highway patrol up there is pretty aggressive towards modified cars. I got to the stage with my Nissan Skyline where I couldn't drive it because I'd just get defected. I'd get pulled over every time I drove it, and it just took all the fun out of it, right?
It leaves a bitter taste in your mouth, man. And the same thing's happening with me
here. And it creates resentment towards the authorities. When the police should be a community organisation, right? They're there for the community, not against the community, which I think is something that has changed. But then now the four-wheel drive community is the target, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that always drives me nuts, and even just on the drive over here today, 2 hot rods went past me. The roofs are chopped. They've got these massive tyres, no guards, cranky motors, super loud. I'm like, how is that registerable?
Yeah.
And that's not covered by VSB 14.
Yeah.
Oh, they're different.
Yeah, okay.
But why? So like,
and that's what I mean, man.
There's no logic to the rules, right?
No.
And then they go on about loud exhausts. Harleys?
Yeah. Yep.
Like there's just no consistency.
No.
And when Paulie and I were chatting about this, we were talking about like a nationalised standard. But his concern with that was, well, they're not going to make it less strict. It's probably going to get worse, right?
Yeah. Well, see, that's what VSB 14 was, right? VSB 14 was supposed to be a federalisation of vehicle standards across, the country. And different states have been able to bend that to even get us what we've got. So like, Queensland has been able to do the 4-inch and 35s for patrols with the Superior stuff. Different companies have been able to slide through second stage manufacturing. So like I can have a 79 series, 5 inches of lift and 37s as long as I bought it brand new.
That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I know. But that's what I mean.
But you drive it out of the dealership and put that exact same gear on the car and it's illegal.
Unsafe.
Like it's craziness, eh?
I think that flyer's made its way from you over to me.
Yeah, it was driving me nuts before and now it's moved over. It's going to cop it in a second.
Boom. Murder on YouTube. So this is what I was talking with you about the other day. So
we got there in the end.
So we've got a big following. We've got a big, four-wheel driving is huge, right? We've got a big voice between us. Like you count, all the guys from all the different channels. We're talking people that have got north of 100,000 followers. Legislation can change, and it does change. And I just wish if there's someone out there that knows anyone in government or, any way we can lobby or something that we can do, petitions, I don't know, but just some way, if we can get some sort of federal permit to be able to run a car a certain way, have like a bit more lenience than VSB 14. You pay a yearly fee, you keep a logbook, you must be only transiting between your home and your four-wheel drive destination. And, you've got to get the car looked over once a year to make sure that it's somewhat safe, etc. Maybe you pay higher rego, higher MAIB, something, because I'm willing to spend money on this. I'm willing to do what's needed in order to keep the boys in blue happy, because at the end of the day, as I said, there's two types of people. There's people that want to look pretty with the biggest lift and the biggest tyres, and there's people that just want to be as safe off-road as safe on-road.
Yep.
I'm this guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't care about looking big and cool. I'm not
That's
a
why you
hot
don't
rod.
drive around on trips.
Exactly.
You put them on the tray or you put them in a trailer.
Exactly right.
Because they're a terrible road tyre.
They are a terrible road tyre. And so, yeah, if you know some way we can make something happen, like...
I read something the other day I think it was on a Facebook discussion about this particular topic, and I can't remember who it was that said it, but they were suggesting that as a community, as an industry, we should pool funds, and it will cost money to employ a professional lobbying agency, basically. Okay. There are lobby groups out there that very successfully engage with government to have legislation changed, right?
Yep.
Usually it's for personal interest stuff like rezoning and those sorts of things. But there are organisations out there that know who we need to talk to in government and how to get things changed, but it needs to be funded somehow.
Yeah.
And I wonder, as at GME, we're the full drive community is a big customer of ours.
Absolutely.
And companies like, endless, right? ARB, Superior, you name it. There's some big companies out there that make a lot of money off the four-wheel drive community. And I wonder if there's an opportunity there for some of those companies to help support the community in terms of making sure that we can continue to modify our vehicles.
Yeah.
If the restrictions become more strict, that's going to negatively impact those companies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that simple.
Yep.
Like, the streetcar scene is nowhere near what it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, in my opinion.
Nah. Well, in fact, I think four-wheel drivers are probably the new customers of those people. Like, the more that, I don't really know a performance brand, but like anyone who used to buy performance gauges, blow-off valves, turbos, intercoolers, that's the four-wheel drivers now, because they're all bunging Barras and whatever in their four-wheel drives.
Yep.
So like...
Well, that's me, right? Like, instead of buying a Garrett, I'm buying a G-Turbo or four-wheel drive specific stuff, diesel performance stuff.
Yeah.
PDI, HPD, all these companies that... And I'm not targeting any of them saying anything negative, but I'm just saying that they've got a vested interest
in making sure that this sport continues.
Yeah. And there are aspects to it that are so important, like mental health.
Dude, that's a big one.
For so many people, I know for me and a lot of my mates, being able to go out in the bush, have a good time with your mates, being outside. Well,
even just you've seen, you and I have had some serious conversations about my mental health lately from being harassed by because this is... Dead set, that car's got 6 figures of my money through it. The GU's got probably not that much through it. Like, I've got a 6-figure mortgage for this shed to pursue this hobby with these cars. Like, I've got a lot invested in this, and just getting beaten when you're not even one of the token blokes that is doing this to look big. I'm just trying to be safe on the tracks. Like that affects your mental health. I've had a horrible time lately.
Yeah,
like
because it's stress, right?
Yeah, for sure, man.
And I think there are so many things that go on in this world that the police should be focusing on.
Yeah.
And I understand that Highway Patrol aren't going out and chasing pedophiles. Like, I get that Highway Patrol is there for the roads. But like, you see so many absolutely dangerous shitboxes on the road.
Yeah, they're out there. They're 100% out there.
And a fully modified vehicle, like, it's so frustrating. Like, my 80, for example, like, it brakes way better than any factory 80 series ever did.
Yeah.
I know that because I've upgraded the entire braking system.
Yeah.
And I'm currently going through the process of engineering those modifications,
Yep.
and the engineer's like, this car stops amazingly.
Yeah, exactly right.
But
And
you've still got to go and tick all the boxes to say it's been done.
Yep.
Now, I'm happy to go through that process.
yeah,
But then I've got the same issue, right? Like I've got 35 12.5 17s on beadlocks.
yeah,
Cannot get engineered.
yeah, can't do it.
Just cannot. Why not? Oh, you just can't. But
Yeah.
I can do a 315. I can't run a neg 38, but I can run a neg 22.
Yeah.
But wider track width, the car's more stable. It's like, it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, and that comes back to those amounts that I was talking about. No more than 50 mil this, 50 mil this, 50 mil this. Like it's just
Unless it's a hot rod.
yeah.
And then you can just do whatever you want
Yeah.
and it's registrable.
Yeah, it's interesting with the beadlocks, and this is where the state by state thing gets difficult, right? Because with beadlocks in Tasmania, my engineer can't certify my car while it's on beadlocks. Like let's assume that I've got the correct size tyre, the correct width tyre. He can't certify my car while it's on beadlocks, but once it's mod plated and engineered, I'm talking about the GU here, I can put beadlocks on it and I cannot fail a roadworthy for them in Tasmania.
Really?
Dead set. I asked because my engineer was telling me one day, he was like, I can't certify your car on beadlocks, but once it's engineered, you cannot fail a roadworthy for them. And so I confirmed with Transport, I said, will beadlocks fail a roadworthy with you guys? And he said, no.
That's wild.
In Tasmania.
And New South Wales, straight to jail.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if I'm driving around, I'm cruising around. Let's assume that I'm Joe Blow who gets work, who I just pay for work to be done, right? So I'm going to the mainland. My engineers told me I can run beadlocks and not fail a roadworthy. So I get on the boat, go to Victoria, doing the high country with my wife and kids. Pulled over. What do? Tell him. Is he going to listen?
No.
No.
They don't give a shit.
He'll
right?
ground my car like they grounded Kaidos and Pooley and that.
And made him tow his car back to Gloucester.
To Queensland.
No, it was to Gloucester. I think he's still
New
in
South Wales?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But a mission. So
Yeah,
I
mission.
think his dad brought like a car trailer down.
Yeah, he did.
And towed it back.
Yeah,
Because
Lockie told me about that.
beadlocks are illegal because
Danger.
danger. So you've got more bolts holding your wheel together,
Yeah.
and that's more dangerous.
I'm not even sure what the legislation actually is in ADR. Like whether it's because maybe the wording is rims must be one piece to attack splitties, possibly.
But aren't split rims legal?
I don't actually know. I'm just
Isn't that what they were factory on, like a 40 series Land Cruiser?
Yeah,
Didn't they
yeah.
come with a split rim?
yeah, they did. I've got a feeling splitties are illegal now,
Yeah, right.
but I think the law is something like your rims must be one piece.
So I've had a conversation with someone about this previously, and it's stupid, but beadlocks aren't illegal, they're just not legal.
I think you're right.
So they haven't been ADR approved,
But-
subsequently they cannot be used for road use.
It's exactly the same as LED headlights.
Yes.
They're not yet written into ADR.
That's right.
And so they're not illegal.
But they're not legal.
Yeah, but
Like it sounds dumb, but
they don't exist.
yeah, it's they're just the
Schrodinger's
concept.
mods.
yeah. So look, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to keep talking about it on this show and see if there's a way that industry can start to work together. I want to be able to continue driving modified four-wheel drives.
Yeah.
You want that as well.
Yeah.
And, for the youngsters coming through, like I want them to be able to come and have fun four-wheel driving because it's been an amazing part of my life.
Yeah.
And I know for you, it's a huge part of your life, right?
It's a massive, both for my personally, as like just something I love doing, and like the YouTube thing has been so much fun, and to just be harassed for it from day one, like there came like I've been wondering lately whether because this was only a problem since I turned the cameras on, right? Turn the cameras back off and just keep doing what I did for years and years and years. Because as I said,
shame though.
it would be, and I know that they'd I've had a lot of amazing support on YouTube, and I don't mean to scare. Like I'm going to keep doing it, but like just as a point, Like the fact that I've never been pulled over in person, and the fact that this only ever came about because I was pointing a camera at it. And like, I'm the only person in my friend group that's got to watch what I do, you know?
It's pretty unfair, man. I know, like, Sam Young's had the same dramas, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
his car got called in when it was in Kinsella's workshop.
Yep.
Like, they hadn't even finished doing it yet.
Yeah.
But because he filmed it and put an episode out, he got called in, and he's had endless dramas with
Yeah.
that 80 series trying to get it on the road.
Yeah.
Every time it's on the road, he gets a letter.
Yeah.
And it's because he films it, right?
Yeah.
But then, as I said, there's plenty of illegally modified vehicles cruising around the streets, and they tend to get left alone. So
Yep.
I think it's pretty unfair, and there needs to be some sort of middle ground. And I think your suggestion's a really valid one, right? Like,
Just a different plate.
I'd pay for a 4-wheel drive specific registration.
Yep. You're
Like-
only allowed to drive. You can argue about
Give me
the
60
amounts.
days a year.
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
not like 60 days a year is what I think Club Rego is in New South Wales. I think you
Yep.
can drive 60 days a year.
You pay a bit more MAIB, like a bit more insurance. You've got to get it looked over.
You've got to get a logbook.
You got
But
to,
like 60 days of wheeling a year is heaps. Like,
Yeah.
the vast majority of people don't wheel 60 days a year, right?
and it does the same thing. If you've got a that has the sway bars ripped out and it's lifted to the nines, you're running 40s, stupid stuff with no supporting mods, no good brakes and everything, you can still get booted out the door.
Yes.
But it just means that the highly modified ones that have brake booster upgrades and steering box upgrades and diff upgrades and everything to be able to handle what it's running, like we can get waved through at least, and you can
Show
still
your paperwork and say, hey, here it is, it's all legit.
Yep, and you can make money off us. Like I'm ready to pay for a permit.
Yeah.
I'm ready to pay for that 4-wheel drive rego.
If you could engineer, and like it's always hard to say, right? Like, if we could only engineer 35s, would everyone go and get engineering certificates? Probably not. There's still heaps of people that have just run the gauntlet, right?
Yeah.
But like,
They're doing that already.
they're already doing it, right?
Yeah.
So no matter what, there's always got to be a line. But I think things like tyres, you mentioned it, right? Where's the data to show that large tyres have resulted in accidents?
Yeah. Well, look at the United States. They're all running 37s are small there.
Yeah. They're all on 40s, 42s, cruising around.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily have to run, I'm not hell bent on 37s. If I could just get 35s engineered and let's just make that a standard, then the ruts in Australia would change. Everything it sort of mould to that tyre size type thing. And so I just wish there was somewhere, because legislation does change. I know it's changed down here. An example I got given was you were only allowed to have so much overhang on a trailer, and some bloke wanted to be able to have his canoe or kayak, and so they got it lobbied. And as long as the item that you've got on your trailer is like a maritime device, you're allowed to have more of an overhang, and that got put through.
Money, right?
So it can happen. We just need the right people saying the right thing in the right direction. Until then, we're just all kicking our rocks and whinging that the rules aren't fair.
And there's one other piece of the puzzle that I think is really important, because you're a prime example, right? You film stuff and put it on YouTube and you're getting harassed. The authorities are watching social media, people. If you go and do dumb shit, don't film it and put it on the internet.
Yeah.
Because you're making it harder for everyone. Like, I see so much stuff on Instagram, and I feel like a whinging old man here, but you see so much dumb stuff being done in 4-wheel drives and being promoted on the internet by big reshare pages that have got 70, 80, 100,000 followers, and they're putting up these videos of people just doing blatantly illegal stuff, and it gives them ammunition.
Yeah.
Just makes it harder for everyone.
100%.
So have fun, do it on private property, don't film it and don't put it on the internet.
Yeah.
That's my advice for today.
Uncle Tony.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Well, mate, this has been a fantastic chat. I've really enjoyed having you on here. And I also have to say thank you for all the help you give me on this trip.
Yeah, no worries at all, man.
You've been an absolute legend, letting me use your workshop and your winch and every other thing that you've done for me. So, you know, I really do appreciate it. And
Always welcome, man, and always happy to help.
will remain as the #1 four-wheel drive ambassador for the state of Tasmania. In
Thank you, man.
so, cheers,
Appreciate
brother.
it.
Great to see you.
Yeah, you too.
And we will see all of you next time on the outer side. Maybe not in Tasmania, because I might have banned myself from this state.